So I'm very fortunate, but I was able to stick in that chair for a long time. So on the surface, no sane person would have walked away from what I did. We've had this whole transition from remotes to a lot less remote. I went to a breakfast with Jamie Dimon. I was at their beautiful $3 billion new headquarters in Manhattan, and it is 5 days a week. It is a city. Like, one, I don't know how you spend $3 billion on a building, but I could kind of tell they had like 6 foot ceiling, 6 story ceilings. I mean, yeah. Um, but what it did is there was this community and camaraderie that allowed things and ideas to flow because people are spending time with each other. Several of us just came back from India. Several of us are about to go to our offices in India. And a lot of the team members and leadership in India come here multiple times a year. And I think so much of it is it's one thing for us to be on a virtual call and have a conversation. It's another thing to spend time and commune and break bread and build a relationship that is a lot more meaningful than here's the task, here's the Jira board, here's the Asana tab, and it being task oriented because at that point you start losing the humanity and you start treating the person as an object, as a human resource, which I hate that word because it starts to almost act like a robot in the way that you treat people as opposed to on both sides being able to invest at an emotional level. So you've had these conversations, you've done these interviews, but you always have had this entrepreneurial itch.
Yeah.
And not only investing in the distillery, but it's always very, very difficult to transition from a multi-decade career, a very successful career, to being like, hey, I want to go into wealth management with my buddy from college. Now, on the surface, it seems like a big
Leap. Yeah.
leap.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I don't think it is because one thing that you talked about is you are discovering and asking questions to find the deeper self of other people. Walk us through, I think, that personal connection between you being an anchor and that transition into running a wealth management firm.
Thanks, JP. Yeah. So quick version goes like this, that when I was in television, and I did, guys, if y'all don't, if you haven't been in Atlanta a long time, I did have a great job. It was at the #1 station. I was the main guy. It was kind of like I wasn't really fireable because in television, if you have really strong ratings,
And your Emmy award-winning show.
yeah, and I'd done all the cool stuff. I got to be one-on-one with Obama in the White House. I just got all these cool assignments, and I give a lot of credit to the brand that I used to work for and my colleagues. So I'm very fortunate, but I was able to stick in that chair for a long time. So it was and it had a very big guaranteed contract. These are just facts. So on the surface, no sane person would have walked away from what I did. Truth be told, that going back, oh gosh, 15 years ago, longer than that ago, even though I had my television career, I was a curious minded dude. And I had a couple really big wins under my belt. Started buying Home Depot stock in the 90s because I was paying attention. I lived in, Atlanta, and I was like, wait, this something's going on here. They're changing the model. So think about what y'all do. Everything's about when you find somebody who's changing the model. I started buying Apple in 2002. It was like, they're doing it differently. They care about their packaging. And I remember then hearing Steve Jobs talk about why that mattered. And I was like, oh, this son of a gun, this is going to flip it all on its ear. So I got some good wins. When I realized it was time for me to make this more than a hobby and manage my own money and my family's money, was when my friends started coming to me and they're like, you're telling me stuff that my money manager is not, and you end up being right. And I was like, that's interesting. So 2015 comes along and I call my guy at JP Morgan, and he's still a good friend. I said, Keith, I want you to sell 50% of everything I own and buy Google. This is 2015. And he said, are you drunk? He's like, seriously, farmer, where's this coming from? And I said, I just had a conversation with the general sales manager at the TV station I work for. And I said, how you been, buddy? Da, 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 da. They used to print money in legacy media. He said, shit's hitting the fan. It's not good. Why? Because our ad dollars are moving away from 30 and 60-second spots on legacy television, and they're going to Google because they can drill down to the zip code, and they can do this, and they can do that, and they can pick demographics and party and gender and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, slow down, keep going. I'm taking notes. So I called my dad. I said, dude, they're going to change the fucking world. So I bought enough Google to change the trajectory for my family. We all know what it's become, and God, they've had a great year. Thank you. So I basically turned that interest in finance. I never talked about it at TV or at work because it really wasn't appropriate. But in all of my free time, that's what I was doing, was building portfolios, and I was just deep in it. Finally, I said, I'm going to go study and pass all the exams and get all my stuff. And so I did. And then I went to my bosses and I said, here's what's occurred. This is the truth. I'm giving you basically 2 years notice because I loved them. And I love that brand and they were good to me. So here's max notice because it's not an easy thing to replace a main anchor. And that's how I got here. So that's the story of how I turned one career into another career. It didn't happen in a year. It happened over a decade or more. The common thread to your question, JP, is that what I learned in television and what I use today in business is that same notion. I used to try to connect with people through a camera lens, and that's pretty hard. You're looking into a curved piece of glass. Now I can connect with people, and it's actually more fulfilling. As much as I love that career, this is more fulfilling because when I'm sitting at your kitchen table or you're sitting in our office or we're having lunch at Chops or whatever, wherever we're hanging out at a Braves game, is I'm going to dig into an area no one's ever talked to you about. People are more emotional about their money than their wife and kids and their spouse and their kids. I hate to say it, but it's true. It doesn't mean they love their money more than their children. I don't mean it. It's not quite like that straight of a line, but you want to get people weird and you want to find out how they tick, look at their money, right? And so knowing that going in, how do I connect with these people? What is it I can connect about? And I'll give you one last little tip. Ask your money manager if you don't already have one. There's a lot of really smart people, a lot smarter than me on Wall Street, who can manage a pretty good portfolio. You have diversification, you take the 5 sectors, you do some rebalancing every 30 and 120 days, and ostensibly, especially if they're a fiduciary, which I'm happy to touch on, they should do a pretty decent, responsible job for you. So where's the differentiation? Can anybody? I'm going to put this to smart room people. So if there's a lot of money managers, lots and hundreds of thousands of them, and let's say that they're all running at least a level B of effectiveness. Not, I mean, there are some C's and D's and F's, I assure you, and some unscrupulous folks. But let's say you take all the B students in money management, okay? What differentiates one from another? What would be the question? Anybody want to take a stab? That's one, but there's a very tactical one. Very tactical. Tax strategy.
A tax strategy.
Tax strategy. Most wealth managers will not talk to you about taxes. Let me tell you why tax strategy is everything. The best money managers in the world over time can barely keep up with the S&P 500. Okay, now you say, well, then why would you hire them? Because if they're really good at their job, they can do it for half the risk of the S&P. But again, that's getting nerded out. But here's the thing. The best money managers in the world, let's say over a 10-year period, can do 11.5%. That's an amazing manager, money manager. It could be amazing. But 11.5%, if I save you $1 on your income taxes and your state income taxes, and you're in the highest tax bracket, it's 40%. There's no money manager on earth without lying, stealing, cheating, and going to jail, Bernie Madoff, who can return to you 40% on your money. But the best wealth advisors in the world, we start every conversation about, let's understand what taxes you're paying. What's your business structure? Let me see your tax returns. And then when you find somebody tax savings, they're like, whatever you say, boss.